A very good evening to our viewers. Thank you for joining us tonight on the agenda. My name is Toiwan Jabela, your host. Tonight, for the first time, we are welcoming to the platform Dr. John Steytler. He is the Chief Executive Officer of the Development Bank of Namibia, to reflect partially on the journey, the 12-month journey, or 1-year journey rather, as head of the bank. He is celebrating his first year in office this month, and we thought we could reflect with him on issues and developments at the Development Bank. John, thank you very much for making time. I've been wanting to speak to you for a long time, but I know that the busy man that you are, with this huge mandate on your shoulders, I could understand why it has taken that long, but I'm so glad that you are here. How has it been, 12 months at the bank?
Well, Toivo, I can maybe summarize it in one word.
Yeah.
Every day for me has been rewarding.
Yeah.
Because there's so much happening at the bank. No single day is the same. So I've been very happy. I'm very grateful that I inherited a team that's highly competent, that's motivated, and also that are young. So in terms of the age distribution, I'm actually the second oldest at the bank.
Yeah?
And if you look at the median age, it's quite young, and the staff members are really driven. So I've been very happy during the first 12 months.
Wonderful. Yeah. What was your first impression when you walked in? Because, I mean, as an outsider, you must have had your perceptions, and then you walk in and then reality hits. What was your impression of the state of the bank when you took over?
I was actually surprised, firstly, to see there are so many competent people at the development bank. Just to give an example, we have about 5 chartered accountants and highly trained, smart people, willing to work, willing to put in after hours. So I thought maybe I was going to come into a situation where people will work from 8 to 5. But I've seen generally people like to deliver on their assignments, even if they have to go the extra mile and work after hours. Often when I take a walk after 5 o'clock, I see people still in their offices. So that was a good surprise for me. On the negative side, I have underestimated the financial status of the bank. What was a awakening for me was the high NPLs that we still have, the non-performing loans. Just to put it into context, our NPL stands at 35%. Now for a DFI, it should be closer to 15%.
DFI is what stands for?
Development Finance Institution. So DFIs, they differentiate themselves from commercial banks. So commercial banks, the NPL ratio should not exceed 5%. So if a commercial bank has an impairment rate of more than 5%, they panic. So, but for development banks, we say we are not like commercial banks. We deploy patient capital. So we can wait a bit longer. That's why the benchmark is 15%. But at a DBN, we are sitting at 35%. I was also not aware of the huge impact that COVID had on the loan book of the DBN. Because the sectors where we have high NPLs are in sectors that were severely hit by COVID and that are still struggling to recover. So, and I think it's not only maybe for the DBN, perhaps there are other businesses that have just died, but we are still trying to see if we can't resuscitate and rescue some of the businesses that were heavily impacted by COVID.
On non-performing loans, Doctor, this COVID is one thing, but what are the other factors? Because I think even prior to COVID, there's been simmering concerns that that habit was actually entrenching in itself. And for example, there's been arguments that people perceive the bank as a state entity, and they see it as some sort of charity organization where they just think it's our bank, and then they neglect their duties to pay back the loans. Is that sort of also a situation that you found?
I think yes, but there are also other factors. So one thing that I've realized is when you put a loan on the book at the beginning, at origination, there must be quality. And if there's not quality, then you will have NPLs later in the tenure of the loan. So I think sometimes we did not pay sufficient attention to the due diligence. There's also some businesses that were underfunded, and then there are cost overruns, and then we have to correct for it, and then the cost just becomes more and more. There are also businesses that have been overfunded. So the business could sustain, for example, a repayment on a $1 million loan. But then we gave a $2 million loan. Yeah. So the business cannot generate enough to support the servicing of a $2 million loan. So these are all lessons that we are pondering on and to see where is it that we went wrong, why are our NPLs so high.
One of the first things that you did, if I remember correctly, John, was that you pushed for some sort of mentoring scheme, I don't know how you called it, where you sort of said as part of your approach you must also now sort of mentor businesses so that apart from getting money, they are also somehow skilled in how to handle those funds. What can you tell us about that idea?
Yes, so there are actually three ideas, and these are what we call policy-based instruments that we have developed in conjunction with the Ministry of Finance. So the first one is the National Mentoring and Coaching Scheme. And over the past 2 to 3 years, we have trained probably more than 200 or 300 SMEs. But we train SMEs not only for the DBN, some of the SMEs then also get access to funding from commercial banks. Yeah. And what we have seen is where SMEs has undergone that training, then they are better prepared to survive. So it's a very effective training program, but obviously 300 is just a drop in the ocean because we have so many young people that are unemployed that potentially could open up a small business, even if it just sustains themselves. So we've also pioneered a credit guarantee scheme, which we have now handed over to Nasria to implement. And the DBN is now a participant of the credit guarantee scheme. I believe this is a very important scheme because one of the key challenges that especially young people face and previously disadvantaged people face is the lack of collateral. So here there's at least a guarantee of up to 60%, so we can take more risk and it makes it easier to cover in the collateral. We've also done the venture capital fund. It's not been launched yet. That's the prerogative of the Minister of Finance to launch it, but I believe it will happen in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Okay. So that we can then cater also for high risk. Because sometimes if you make use of the money of the public, then you cannot be too risky. Because we also have a duty and an obligation to see that if you put a deposit with us, that we should be able to repay that deposit. So, but with venture capital, we can take then more risky decisions.
Yeah. Can you expand on what you said earlier, John, about the financial state that you found the bank in? I think I saw the 2023 annual report, and there was an article that we wrote in Namibian Sun at the time. I can't remember all the details, but the numbers of the amount, I think, losses were quite staggering at the time, and a lot of people were actually shocked because the impression of all of us, just like you said also yourself, as outsiders, we thought really that this was a thriving entity.
Well, I think it's still a good entity. The DBN is still solid. If I look at our capital base, it's still strong. We're still liquid. But where we had a challenge was on the non-performing loans that went up to 37%. Where we also had a challenge is that we became unprofitable. We actually recorded losses. In 23-24, there was a loss of about 280 million.
Yeah, I remember.
But On the other hand, I also want maybe just to use this opportunity to explain that DBN, not only DBN, development finance institutions, they must have a longer term view. We also refer to it as when we deploy capital, that it must be patient capital. So on the one hand, we had the profits that became negative, the high NPLs. But on the other hand, if you look at our developmental impact report, we were also able to sustain a number of jobs and also to create additional jobs. And I believe going forward, we will return into profitability again. We've put in place actions that will reduce the NPLs, that will assist us to grow the loan book, and that will bring profitability back into the bank. In fact, our financials have been approved, audited by the board, but I can't give you the figure now, but I can already hint that this, in the financial year 23-24, we are back into profitability.
Oh, wonderful. That's very good news. At your, I believe it was your 20th anniversary recently, you reflected on the journey of the bank since 2004 when it was created from a very small base. And I think in your speech you said that 20 billion worth of financing has been disbursed by the bank during that journey. What are some of the flagship projects that we can point to as a country and say that is a product of that financing?
Oh, there are so many. Let me first start with a program that we are very, that we always cite, that we are very happy about. Is DBN has unlocked renewable energy. About 14 years ago, it was unheard of to have solar plants, and banks were scared to go into it. But DBN took the risk, and we started with a 5 megawatt project. Today, DBN has developed up to 100 megawatts of solar electricity. And at the same time, DBN has also de-risked the sector. So we see now private and commercial banks are also starting to fund solar plants, which was not the case 14 years ago. The other one that maybe I could cite is that we have played a key role in the oil storage facility, the National Oil Storage Facility. It's there, people can see for it. But where we've made a lot of impact has been at land service delivery and also the construction of top structures. But we've also lent to education, to hospitals. And one thing that I'm proud of, DBN developed a product that we called skills-based lending. So under skills-based lending, we have two streams. One is for artisans that have gone through TVET. They can qualify for a small loan at a DBN and start a business. And then the other is more for professionals. Here we have supported quite a number of medical doctors, pharmacists, and also lawyers, for example, to start their firms.
Wonderful. So, anyone who asks the elementary question of what a development bank is, this concept compared to your traditional everyday commercial banks, where is that line? What separates you from others?
I think what separates us from others is that we are in for the long term. We don't want just to be in and out, because that's not development. We are also saying that we are not in competition with commercial banks. If a commercial bank can't fund a transaction, we can bring in what we call the additionality. We can look at how we structure the project to make it palatable and feasible. But what we also look at is the deployment of what we say patient capital. So we say we are not in a hurry to get our returns back. Of course, we must get them back. The other one is also for the DBN, development finance institutions, is to go into territories that are unknown, to unlock that. And here I gave you the example of renewable energies. But some of the sectors that we want to unlock more low-cost housing solutions. So in fact, we are teaming up with a Friends Development Bank to assist us to develop a product for low-income houses. We also want to be more intentional on rolling out products for young people and for women. In fact, in our current 5-year plan, our target is that by 2029, 30% of the loan book should be directed towards women and youth. Currently, it's 11%. So this is a change that we want to make.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the DBN Business Rescue Program. What is that? And maybe if you can first tell us what it is.
Okay, that came because of the economic downturn and also because of COVID. So suddenly a number of our clients, they found it very difficult to service their debt. And we came up with a program just for the DBN clients where we say we can take you through business rescue. So business rescue essentially has 2 elements. One is we provide transactional advisors to advise a business that's under stress to turn around. And it could be in the form of just changing your business model that you can turn around.
Yeah.
Sometimes we also see that you need equity injection. And then the transactional advisor will also see if there are people out there that can put equity in the business.
Yeah.
But the key thing for us was at the beginning we said for some businesses that were under severe stress, if we can find a way to reduce the stress levels on the debt. And that we have done by converting some of our loans into Pref shares. And that actually reduced the debt burden to some extent. And then also through restructuring where we say, okay, this loan was supposed to be repaid over 5 years. We'll give you 8 years to repay now. So these are some of the things that we've done under business rescue.
Yeah. A specific example, John, of that is that in 2023, around August, of course you were not officially with the bank yet, but you must have found it running already, that program. The acquisition of the Otapi shopping center. And the background, of course, is that the owner of this bank, who has been in the press a lot actually, was struggling exactly like you're saying. And so the bank acquired some equity shareholding, I suppose, in this project. If you can explain that model of acquiring some sort of ownership into entities that are struggling.
Okay, so it's not, equity is a bit too strong, but we have converted some of our exposures into what we call Pref shares. And that then brings down the debt burden. Okay. We've done it for quite a number of companies, not only for Otapi. And then we also enter into a discussion to say, how can we restructure this business so that the business will be able to repay the loan and not go in debt distress again.
Yeah. So you're not a part owner of something like this, like the Otapi one. You're not a part owner of that.
Not necessarily, because the idea with the Pref shares is that at some point after the business has turned, then we exit. Yes. Okay. So we don't want to be equity investors in shopping malls, for example. We do have equity investment in 1 or 2 companies. The main one is the Orongo Cement, and then we also have a bit of equity in Norsat, which is a development finance institution. But in general, we don't want to have equity. But so we have come up with the idea of a Pref share just to reduce the debt burden and to give time for the business to turn around.
Yeah. Do you not think that is it not the development bank's idea that when they are doing a GIPF, for example, investing in the likes of Capricorn, I think, and elsewhere, in order for you to also grow your revenue base and to really also put out huge amounts of money, then you have already brilliantly done, actually. It can be better. Is that something that is in the psyche of the bank?
Not for now. We really want to invest, to put new capital into businesses that did not start yet.
Yeah.
I think it's not good for us if we are going to invest now in established businesses, because that's not a developmental role. Remember I said we want to do additionality.
Yeah.
If commercial banks, if the GIPF can already do it, then as the development bank we say let's focus rather on a sector that's underdeveloped and we put money in that sector or in that industry.
Do you invest in big development projects, or do you have or do you confine yourself to a certain threshold? I'm trying to think, for example, whether the issues like green hydrogen that is coming up and these huge amounts of money, the state, of course, is acquiring 25% equity stake in that one. Of course, the argument is that all these grants that they're getting from Europe and elsewhere are already taking care of that, so they're not going to be, there's not going to be money out of government's pocket to pay for that. But do you have a threshold of how much to say once a project is this much, then we don't get involved, or do you, it's a matter of availability of funds on your side?
So we can invest from as little as 200,000, and then it goes up to 10 million, then it forms part of the loan book for SMEs. But then we also have larger investments, which now is 15 million and higher, and there we have a single obligo limit. That limit is linked to the capital base of the DBN.
Okay.
So currently it's about 14%, and because of the current capital base, it suggests we can invest up to 400 million. But we've also gone sometimes beyond 400 million, where we have looked at the merit of the particular business case and see can we deviate from the single obligo limit. Now, coming to the green hydrogen, our approach is slightly different as the DBN. So we have, in our strategy, we say we want to play a role in green industrialization. And we believe that because of the green hydrogen, there will be many opportunities for Namibians to participate. It could be in auxiliary services, and this way DBN can come in. But in terms of the huge investments, we don't have that strong balance sheet. But we do believe when the green hydrogen takes off, there will be a lot of other business opportunities where the DBN could play a financing role.
Yeah. Before we go on a short break, John, I think one of the because you spoke about 15 million being sort of some of the largest amounts that you give out, but there was this transaction with Midco. It was publicized widely, where I think Midco owed commercial banks, and then I don't know whether DBN had to pay those commercial banks on behalf of Midco, and then the liability shifts to Midco's liability shifts to DBN. What can you tell us about that? I think it's quite public.
Okay, maybe just firstly, the 15 million threshold is for SMEs.
Oh, SMEs.
So
okay.
Then, because we had to come up with a threshold. When it's an SME or not, so we've put it at 15 million. But beyond 15 million, we see that you are now a big company.
Yeah.
And then from there, we can go up to sometimes 350, 400 million.
Okay.
So in the case of Midco, they had a request of 250 million that we advanced to them, but it came with key conditions, because we also thought that through advancing this support to Midco, we can also play a role in assisting with the turnaround of Midco. So we have put up a number of conditions that could potentially assist Midco in turning around in future.
Yeah.
But also we have insisted on a government guarantee. If there was no government guarantee, we would not have extended the funding to Midco.
Yeah, because that is what I was going to ask, whether it was a wise investment. But I suppose if you have a guarantee, then you know somehow you'll get back your money. We will go on a very short break and then return with Dr. John Steytler.
Neopaints has established a 67-year Namibian legacy, creating personalized paint solutions that blend quality and innovation for the Namibian people. We pride ourselves in being a 100% Namibian-owned company, investing in our country and our people by employing and empowering true Namibians. With every brushstroke, Neopaints commits to our quality guarantee and always delivering a coat of excellence. At Neopaints, we always stay true to our country. We are as Namibian as you.
Our conversation with Dr. John Steytler continues on the agenda. Now, Doc, how much, because the bank obviously is a state institution, you are accountable to the shareholder, and part of, you have the mandate to meet the country's development agenda halfway, but you must also meet government halfway in its own developmental initiatives. Because of that symbiotic relationship, how much external pressure or even interference do you experience as a bank from the shareholder to say we have a critical situation at Midco, for example? I'm just citing an example. You have to intervene there. You have to help us. Do you get such situations where you are ordered to do certain things?
So, at least during my tenure, that was not the case. I cannot speak for the past, but I believe also when I spoke to my predecessor, it didn't happen that government would push them. Mm-hmm. It could be that government will raise, or the shareholder will raise a challenge and maybe an opportunity where the DBN could come in, but it's always the board of directors that will have the final say. Yeah. And one of the reasons is that our funding is not only from the shareholder. We also get funding from other entities. We raise, for example, funding on the stock exchange. We also raise funding through issuance of bonds or credit lines with international DFIs. For example, we have a credit line with the German Development Bank. We are negotiating one with the French Development Bank. And we had a credit line with the Africa Development Bank. Mm-hmm. So now these entities, they also watch what we are doing and they put in covenants. And if we breach those covenants, then we will not be able to get funding from them in future. Mm-hmm. So we have to kind of strike a balance. There's on the one hand the shareholder, but there's also on the other hand other funders, and they have also conditions when we raise funding from them that DBN should be adhering to.
Yeah, maybe that is why I see, for example, rating agencies sometimes actually rating the bank. Is that yes, part of monitoring how you conduct yourselves?
This is exactly rating agencies. They would also like to see that there must be operational independence at a development finance bank or development finance institution. Otherwise, they will shy away from giving money to us.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of, again, following up on my question about external political or otherwise influence, and I know it's a difficult situation for you because I'm sure you are going to tell me that you don't because of client confidentiality clauses and stuff like that. But there's been some situations that have been public. So the one is the one of the husband of the Prime Minister who was owing, I think, 180 million roundabout. Of course, it was not during your time, but you are the man in charge now. That one, I think, was resolved with the acquisition of this Utapi shopping center to set off that debt. Not sure whether it has been now settled correctly or not, I mean finally or not. But the second one was when we saw DBN trying to auction off assets belonging to the Minister of Higher Education, Dr. Itakanji Morangi, and then somehow it was called off. It never went ahead. Were you pressured to call it off?
Definitely not. I mean, there are sometimes legal processes. that we have to adhere to.
Yeah.
And it turned out that the DBN, we also made a mistake through moving too quickly with auction.
Yeah.
And so this process is still under legal frameworks.
Yeah.
And I cannot talk too much about it, understandably.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I get it. But in general, do you have similar situations where politicians owe the bank a lot and they're not being pursued as hard as it should be because they are they are politicians, they are powerful people, they are calling the shots in government?
I do not think that happens. And honestly, when I consult with politicians, and when we did a strategy, I did exactly that, where they actually understand the importance of having fiscal discipline.
Yeah.
They've always encouraged me, John, you must have fiscal discipline. Because if there was too much pressure, then probably today the DBN would not have existed anymore. Because this is what killed most development banks on the continent. It was because of political interference. But yeah, we are 20 years later, and the DBN is still there, and the DBN is still sustainable. So I don't think one should read too much in political interference. It happens, that people will call, not only politicians, but other people also call and say, John, can I refer a client to you? But that application must go through due diligence.
Yeah, yeah.
And there are various checks and balances. So we'll start with origination. It will go for credit assessments. If it's a PIP, we insist even to do enhanced due diligence. Then there are internal committees at a bank that will debate on the merits and the demerits, and eventually we go to a board subcommittee and eventually even to the board.
Yeah, yeah.
So this is where we build in the checks and balances.
Yeah. But you're in this very difficult position also as head of an institution like that, because how do you balance between advancing the mandate of the bank, which is really to invest into development, but at the same time also holding people accountable? Your general, I'm not talking about politicians now, your general clientele, how do you, because again, I'm thinking of this issue about the attitude. People are thinking it's a light-hearted bank because it's a bank of the people, but they also have to pay back. There are rights and obligations.
Toyo, you are spot on. So this is something that we keep on emphasizing, because if we don't have a sustainable development bank, then we can forget about development impact. So for us, the start is to say let's have fiscal sustainability, and then we can have a developmental impact. But what is disappointing is that there are some people, they will have maybe 3 loans, 2 with 2 commercial banks and 1 with a DBN. And what we have seen in the past, that they will service their loans with the commercial banks, but not with a DBN. But here we are really going after them, and we issue summons as well. So we don't just let it go. Obviously, we are open also for discussion and for restructuring.
Yeah.
So sometimes at a DBN we are a bit too patient compared to commercial banks. But we do stand our ground. We do have some cases where we have gone to issue summons. And normally what happens when you issue summon, and often suddenly the client will get money from somewhere.
Absolutely. In terms of government support, do you get subsidies, or are you at a level where you are no longer a baby that is still stuck on a mother's breast?
Yes, so during COVID and the economic downturn, we started to get small subsidies from government. So in fact, it happened with a liquidation of the SME bank. And so there was a vacuum now. There's no government institution that does SME banking. So we've absorbed quite a bit of the loan book of the SME bank and also staff. But out of our own profits, we are not able to support it. And then the government came in and has allocated some funding for us through the budget to support the SME function.
Okay.
But it's not sufficient to cover all the operations of the SME. So we also put our own money into into keeping the operations of the SMEs alive.
Yeah. I suppose you did not inherit the liabilities of SME Bank.
Maybe in a way, if you can say we did, because if you look at we did not inherit the liabilities per se, but when you get a loan book, and that loan book is impaired, heavily impaired, and it's like a liability, isn't it? Let me also just say here that when I spoke of the NPLs of 35%, that was for the entire loan book.
Okay.
If you take the loan book of SME, the impairment or the NPL is 70%. Ooh. So it means that 7 out of 10 SMEs that were funded, they are not servicing their loans.
Yeah.
It's only 3 out of 10 that are servicing their loans.
Yeah.
So this is a huge challenge for us. How do we get people in? And some have, some don't even have assets. Some of these promoters, you can't even go after the assets because there's nothing.
Are you under the watchmanship of the central bank when they announce interest rates and stuff like that? Is that usually just for commercial banks, or you guys are also obliged to follow in those kind of things?
So we are not obliged to follow it, but we do follow, okay, because it has an impact on our cost of funding. So we do have to look at what the interest rates in the market is, and then also adjust ours. In terms of regulations, we are not regulated by the Bank of Namibia, but because we want to be a responsible institution, we have put us under self-regulation. And that self-regulation, it follows a lot of the criteria that the Bank of Namibia uses to regulate commercial banks. Yeah. But then we will just deviate slightly from it. Say, for example, with commercial banks, the NPL ratio should not exceed 5%. Then Bank of Namibia will be on their case. For us, we say we want to be at 15%. And so we do deviate slightly. We have self-regulation, but we deviate from the stringent measures of the Bank of Namibia.
Yeah. How much confidence do you have in your board? Are you getting good support? I'm asking this question, are they skilled enough? Because you are a very skilled man yourself, and it's easy to see loopholes in the quality of those that are above you. I'm asking this question because, again, this sense of entitlement when the current board was appointed. I don't know whether it was the entire board or just some additional members of the board. Then there was a former CEO of FNB. Is it Mr. Van Zyl?
Mr. Van Zyl.
Yeah. And people, not a lot of people, but there were pockets of people saying, some of these people bordering on racism, as a matter of fact. How well do you work with your board?
We have a very professional board, I must say. The board is not operational. In fact, the day that I joined the bank, the board chairperson and the deputy chairperson were there, and some others. They said, John, this is your business, you must run it. Yeah. We will hold you accountable, but we don't want to be in the operations of a company. So all of them are highly experienced, and they've been exposed to good governance principles, and they bring a lot of value to the bank. I must say I've gotten a lot of good advice from the current board. In fact, the term of the current board is about to expire, then we'll have a new board. So I'm also worried, what if I don't get
a good one,
a board that I can work with?
Yeah.
But I do also believe that these people, the board members, they were interviewed. So they were not just assigned to the DBN. And here I think some of the reforms that the Ministry of Public Enterprise has made by encouraging potential prospective board members to go through an interview process. We kind of select members that are really competent, skilled, and that they also have time to be part of to carry out their board functions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have exhausted in a very good way the DBN. Let's talk about the country's economy. John, you've written a lot of think pieces. Some of them we have published them in Namibian Sun, Market Watch. What is your assessment of the economy right now?
Toivo, I think the economy is currently still very weak. There has been growth, but we must consider that this growth is coming from certain pockets. It's led by capital-intensive industries, for example, oil and gas, and also in the mining sector. But if you look at some of the other sectors, even tourism that has shown a recovery, tourism is still not back to where it was before COVID. So tourism is still catching up. Construction still did not recover. Mm-hmm. So there's no broad-based recovery. And you need for economic growth to be sustainable and for the economy to create jobs, you need a growth that's broad-based and sustainable, even if it's at a lower level. So I think we still have some challenges. Another one that I look at is the income, household income. Yeah. If you consider where household income was in 2015-16, we are now there almost 10 years ago, and we're still at the same income level in real terms as 2015-16. So there's still, the economy is still struggling to recover. And now there are emerging challenges, for example, the drought that we have. That can also become a key factor that will restrain or reduce economic growth going forward. But of course, if you look at certain macro indicators, then it shows that the economy is starting to stabilize. One indicator that I like to look at is the debt levels and the budget deficit. You will see for 2 consecutive years now, the Ministry of Finance has tabled a budget where we had what we call a primary surplus. So primary surplus means that you have a surplus if you exclude interest payments. And if you do that, then your debt starts to recalibrate to a sustainable trajectory. And this is what's starting to happen in Namibia, if we can continue on that path. Also, we have seen good progress on collections. Here, I must say, an entity like NAMRA maybe should have been there much earlier, because you can see how much NAMRA is collecting now compared to when it was in the ministry. Also, on the external side, the balance of payment, we've also seen recovery. We've seen our international reserves is standing at all-time high levels. So these are things that put Namibia in a good position to actually be positive about the future. And then, of course, we now have the nascent industries, the green hydrogen, oil and gas, and there's a lot of attention from the world on Namibia. So it's like a kind of mixed bag. If I have to say right now today, I will say the economy is still weak. If I have to take a look maybe 5-7 years from now, then I will say the prospects are looking very good for Namibia.
You've worked as economic advisor to our late president, you know, I saw, for example, Vice President Netumana Nene was speaking at the Hage Memorial at Ongwediva some months ago, and she made the remark to the effect that that these fiscal consolidation efforts of government at the time, where we had really had to tighten our seatbelts, are sort of starting to pay off. Do you hold that view that what we are starting to see could be also linked to what we have done as a country to consolidate finances at the time?
You see, definitely, if we didn't consolidate at that time, you can imagine where our debt would have been. Right now, if you look at the budgetary allocations, I think number 2 budgetary allocation is to pay debt. And you don't want that. Now, had we not been quick on fiscal consolidation, our debt burden would have increased to a level where we were just servicing debt. So I think those fiscal consolidation measures, they're starting to come through and pay off. But it must also be seen in conjunction with some of the other economic reforms that government has introduced. For example, the establishment of NAMRA, the Triple P unit, the reform of the Central Procurement Board, some reforms at BIPA. So many of these reforms are starting to yield fruit now.
Mm-hmm. How must we handle the oil and gas, the emerging oil and gas resources? There seem to be a lot of rhetoric that people are not happy. Some people are saying the oil is really not ours, whatever that means. And there are those who also do not support the idea that we have this perceived minimal equity stakes in some of these finds. How do we make sure? Because for me, I always thought that it's very difficult to undo what has been there already by the time of independence, for example. You couldn't be a new government at the time and just take over the CDM or NAMDEB mines, say it's our resource. But for industries that are starting now that you're in charge, you ought to have structured everything in a manner that now really benefits you. How do we benefit from this resource?
I think the first way where we benefit, you must consider that we are still exploring. So companies are still drilling holes to just see if the oil is there, and they've confirmed there's oil. But many of those wells that were drilled in the past, some were just empty. And if you consider how much it costs to drill one well, it's over $100 million US. So I don't think Namibia should share the risk at the beginning. But when the oil is coming is where we should be getting our rightful cut out of the oil. What I also look at the oil and gas industry is these resources, for me, they belong to Namibia. But we lease it out to the oil companies. So these oil companies, if the oil is coming, whether they produce, whether they make a profit or not, they will still have to pay the rent. The rental income must come to Namibia. It's the same as the royalty that NAMDEB is paying us. If NAMDEB or DEP Marine, whether they make profit or not, based on the revenue, they have to pay a cut to the government.
Are you monitoring the green hydrogen situation? There seems to be mixed fortunes in terms of believing that it's a realistic thing. Some say now we are being sold dreams. But those that are intimately involved in that space, they seem to be confident. And I don't think they will be spending all their time and energy and resources into something that they thought was just a fluke.
We do look very closely at green hydrogen. As I said, we want to play also a small role in the green industrialization, not maybe in the production of green hydrogen per se. I think what we must be aware of is sometimes to manage expectations. And I feel the management of expectations is not always done very well. Why I'm saying this is that the green hydrogen has a lot of potential. And we are seeing now a number of pilot projects that are moving. But at the same time, it's still a virgin industry, not just for Namibia, but also globally. And it's only through these pilots that we'll have more information. And where at some point we can now say, now we have now definite feasibility. If we take the biggest one, which is Hyphen is still doing feasibility. So there's the full business case is not there yet. And I think they will do their feasibility over a period of 2 years. But now if the full feasibility hasn't been done and we start now to cite figures of job creation that is so much and so much, I think we should manage expectations a bit. I think it will take a bit longer, but it will come, the green hydrogen. I'm positive about green industrialization because we are in a process of a transition globally. And you find even oil companies, there are some of the companies that are investing more in green hydrogen because they know that we are moving from a carbon-based economy to a green economy.
As we draw towards the close of this conversation, John, it's election year, and we are going to definitely have a new president come November or come March 2025. What should that president do? Because I know that you are a very passionate man when it comes to things like household income, putting more money into the pockets of people, fighting hunger. Those are some of the things that I know you are very, very passionate about. And those are things actually that are giving us problems in the country. If you read the news in recent weeks, hundreds of people dying from malnutrition in the country and whatnot. And drought, of course, has compounded situations like in the Kunene there, where they are really, really struggling. What should the new president do if you were asked to just give them a word or two of advice?
My first advice would be, let's fix the unemployment situation. Unemployment is just too high. The latest figures we have is from 2018, where it was at 36%, and for young people was even at 48%. Mm-hmm. Probably it's still round about there, if not higher. Mm-hmm. So a new president must come up immediately with an intensive job creation plan that will be able to absorb a number of unskilled people. It's good that we promote the big projects, but we have to link the big projects also to the SMEs so they can create more jobs. So that's for me a key thing. The new president should have sleepless nights over unemployment, and especially over youth unemployment. I will also maybe suggest that one of the things that will also be impactful is if we really tackle the housing backlog much more with much more intensity. I think that will also make a big difference. And then, of course, a sector that I'm also passionate about is agriculture. And here I see there are enormous opportunities. And increasingly, we should also maybe move away from livestock to horticulture and to fresh produce, because there's also good potential in horticulture. So I think my key advice will be just look at sectors that can absorb young people. So the one sector that we must look at that has shown us the capacity to create jobs is tourism and hospitality. So I think we should also do more in tourism and hospitality, because there we know it creates jobs.
Absolutely. John, it was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you. Yeah, really thank you for coming through and for sharing your perspectives. We wish you the best in your journey at the bank. I think the 12 months have been very positive, especially when you mentioned that there are already some signs of profitability, but continue on that trajectory.
Thank you, Toivo.
Wonderful. That is Dr. John Steytler. He is the CEO of the Development Bank of Namibia, speaking to us about how that very important institution of our country is gearing forward with its mandate. Thank you for watching.